The chromatic scale in bar 10 of Pathetique Sonata of the first movement is like an avalanche of emotion, something that starts very slowly and spirals in a very driven and very exciting way into the allegro. To understand how to play this scale well, we will start from discussing the musical ideas behind it. We will then go to 4 different possible fingerings, including the one from the composer himself. We will discuss how the thumb affects our chromatic scale playing. This is a very important aspect because it helps us solve some of the more serious technical problems in this scale. And finally, at the end, we'll talk about some exercises that can be helpful in terms of practicing the scale itself. So artistically speaking, from the musical point of view, there is a number of things to consider. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the musical ideas, it is an emotional avalanche that starts slowly with a question. I would not press any pedal in here. I would press pedal after E flat. And now we would start the avalanche in pianissimo and eventually change pedal here on the dominant. And from here we can consider going crescendo, taking the pedal off and the left hand off on the A flat, giving us another question, dominant, whether we are ready for the allegro or not. And once we are ready, we start. The first fingering that I wanted to discuss is the most standard one. So, as most of you probably practice chromatic scales, you will use the third finger on the black key and the thumb on the white key. And when there are 2 white keys next to each other, you will use 2-1 or 1-2 depending on the direction of the chromatic scale. This is the most standard way of approaching things. And since we practice these fingerings sometimes for many years for the chromatic scale, it seems like this is the most natural choice for the scale in Beethoven. It allows us to play with a very nice level of control, and if our thumb works well, we can also play relatively fast. Now, the fingering, written originally by Beethoven, is a completely different idea. Beethoven's original indication of the fingering shows us only 3 fingerings written in the original score, finger 5, 4 and 3. In between, we use the fingers just in order, so 5, 4, 3 to 1, 4, 3 to 1, 3 to 1, for the total use of thumb of 3 times within a single octave. If we use the same fingering pattern for the entire passage, we will end up with 7 uses of thumb finger. When comparing this with the traditional standard fingering for a chromatic scale, we end up with quite a big difference between 7 and 11 cases of use of thumb. This coincides nicely with the idea that if we are trying to play something very fast, we would like to use thumb less frequently and then create less position shifts. So situations where we have to shift our entire hand into a new position will be happening less frequently. Now, the biggest challenge of us following this fingering pattern for the entire scale is this unwanted position shift between thumb and a 5th finger, which is quite difficult to execute. You can try it out for yourself. For the fastest but also most comfortable way of executing this scale, I suggest finding a compromise, avoiding playing the thumb as frequently as in the standard fingering, but at the same time avoiding this awkward positioning shift towards the 5th finger. So here is an example of my fingering presenting such compromise. There are more possibilities available, but this is what I currently use and what works nicely for me. All those fingering options, as well as other exercises, are included in the practice chart, which I pinned in the comment below. After selecting good fingering for your scale, I think it's time to discuss the role of the thumb in a chromatic scale. If you are using the standard chromatic scale fingering, so the one where the thumb is used very often on nearly every white key, it means that the role of the thumb will be extremely important because it plays so frequently. If it doesn't play well, it can produce either strong accents, which we don't want. We want the scale to be very fluent and very smooth, or it can also lower the hand considerably. So we might feel that we play like this. And you can see that the wrist drops down considerably while playing the thumb. If that's the case, there are 2 possible solutions to this problem. One is that your thumb might be playing using this bone, so like this, or in a very flat way, which will then force your hand to always move down in order to play the thumb. The solution is to try to play the thumb using this part, so the soft beat here next to the nail, and use the thumb at an angle to the keyboard, which will then allow your hand to remain more steady. When I say steady, I don't mean stiff, but just avoiding this. Yes? So that's the first option. Now the second problem is that sometimes how we imagine our thumb to move is that it moves only as the part of entire hand. So it moves like this. From this joint in here, it is attached and it feels kind of stiff, and it does this. So whenever the thumb is supposed to move, the entire hand is moving with it. It does not move independently like this. So you can see right now that my hand is quite steady and the thumb moves up and down on its own. So if that's your problem, you feel that your thumb isn't moving at all, one of the best ways to do is, at least I found this exercise useful, is to ask your thumb to look up before it plays, just as an exercise. So we will do it with the left hand moving up or with the right hand moving down. Those are the best positions for this. So have a look. We move the thumb up and bring it from that height down. Yes? Consider this like a yoga exercise for your thumb. We don't use the thumb later on in a fast tempo like this. That will be huge exaggeration. But try to understand the full extent to which your thumb can move. That will help you understand how to move it while you actually play faster. You will not have to move the hand, but you will be able to play smoothly just because your thumb is more independent. The same thing can be done with the right hand moving down. When you do the exercise itself, don't worry about accents. It's okay to exaggerate them because the movement itself is exaggerated, but hopefully you will feel that by expanding how your thumb moves when you play faster, things become smoother and also that the hand feels more steady. In terms of exercising this scale, I would first try to be very clear about the rhythmical patterns and the groupings of notes in this passage. I think it's quite difficult for our brain, for our fingers to control things if the clarity of rhythm isn't developed in the first place. So let's say that our first group is the 6 notes. So I know that the first note is tied, but we can practice it just for now without the tie. So this is our 6th note. Then we can take the next group. Yes, and then I also suggest, if this is really difficult for you, to divide this large group of notes into 2 smaller sections. So now once we have all those rhythmical groups figured out, we can take each of those groups and try to master them on their own. So let's say if we take the first 6 notes, I know that we're not supposed to repeat that first note because it's tied, but just for the sake of us building some level of confidence, we play it for now. So we can play the first 2 notes, the next, next, yes, then we can take the next group, this one is a bit uneven, again, next, and then the next 8 and next 8. Once you accomplish each of the groups on their own, then join 2 groups together. So let's say the first group, 6, plus the next 7. So we'll do, let's say, starting again with the first 2 notes, then 3, then next, going on further for the rest of the notes. Remember, you can do this exercise going from the front, so starting with first two notes, doing 3, 4, and so on. Or you can go backwards, so let's say take the last 3 notes. Let's figure out the fingering. So I hope you can choose some nice fingering for yourself, that you figured out how to make your thumb feeling like it works in a more independent way, and because of that it plays lighter without accents and without making the hand shift down. And at the end of the day, that you can use some of those exercises to speed things up for yourself while maintaining a very clear sense of rhythm, and at the end deliver the nice musical goal that I think this scale has built into it. Thank you so much. Bye.